We know what Kamala Harris's record is, and we know what his record is, and they are extremely progressive. Talk about how you're going to handle this on the campaign trail. Will you just really hone in on how they voted in the past?
Well, I am. I'm going to be doing that, what he wants. If you look at his record with no walls, no security, let everybody in, he's worse than they are. You know, nobody knew how radical left she was, but he's a smarter version of her, if you want to know the truth. He's probably about the same as Bernie Sanders. He's probably more so than Bernie Sanders. She is more so than Bernie Sanders. That's got to be your guide, Bernie Sanders, and that's not a great guide. But there's never been a ticket like this. This is a ticket that would want this country to go communist immediately, if not sooner. We want no security. We want no anything. He's very heavy into transgender. Anything transgender he thinks is great. And he's not where the country is on anything.
Mr. President,
this is a shocking. Let me tell you, this is a shocking pick, and I think it's very insulting to Jewish people, and I think it's very insulting to people that want security. I think it's very insulting to anything having to do with making America great again.
That was a clearly triggered, upset, and reeling Donald Trump in an interview with Fox and Friends this morning that went so badly, so quickly. It was such a disaster of an interview that one of the Fox hosts was actually laughing at Trump live on air. Yes, Trump's friends at the Fox Propaganda Network were laughing at him because the answers he gave were so absurd and off-putting to voters in just a disaster interview. And that first clip shows exactly what I'm talking about. Republicans and Trump want to paint Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as the most radical politicians who have ever lived because Tim Walz wants to feed hungry kids in schools and make sure the roads and bridges are safe. And Kamala Harris wants to lower the prescription drug costs. She wants to make sure childcare is more affordable. Oh, the most radical people in the world. So scary. What's radical to me is Donald Trump's positions. Wanting to strip women of their reproductive freedoms, wanting to be a dictator on day one, wanting to give huge tax cuts to the wealthiest people in America. That's radical. And so spare me, Donald Trump, that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are trying to destroy our country with their radical agenda, when your agenda is to actually destroy democracy. And Donald Trump gave another ridiculous answer, like I talked about, that made the Fox host laugh at him, that I just want to check out in this clip.
How are you going to make the economy, not just the the food and electricity, but bring down the rent prices, the housing prices, so that these kids can survive and without their parents' help?
Such a good question, Mr. President.
You're right. I hear it very well. And I tell you, first of all, I love the people that you're with. I know that I must have at least 99, perhaps 100% of all of them. And I think they're incredible. We are going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to.
So this morning, not only did Trump do an interview with the Fox and Friends panel, but there were a group of voters who he was taking questions from. And of course, one asked how Donald Trump was planning on making the economy better, something he did the opposite of in his first term. He destroyed it. And his first response wasn't to talk about any plan he has, because he doesn't have a plan, but it was to say, oh, I'm sure your kids who are struggling right now, I'm sure they're voting for me. I'm sure they love me. I'm sure I've locked up 99% or 100% of your demographic. It was so absurd that you heard the chuckle, oh my gosh. You heard the Fox host laughing at Donald Trump. While we weren't able to see it, I could clearly hear it. He was laughing at him. Because Donald Trump's number one response when someone asks about how he's going to help them is to talk about himself. Donald Trump was asked about someone who's struggling right now, and his first thought was, well, they're probably voting for me. That's all he cares about is himself. It's all he's ever cared about. And I cannot believe anyone would entrust Donald Trump to try to help their family get out of a struggle when all Donald Trump ever cares about is himself. No one else, just himself. And I'm surprised that he wasn't called out for that. Sure, he was laughed at, but he should have been called out. But again, this is the Fox Propaganda Network. They don't really do tough questions, even though that Donald Trump claimed that they did in this clip.
I hear she's hasn't taken one interview. She would never do an interview like this. That I can guarantee with any network. She doesn't do interviews because she can't answer questions. I don't know how she debates. I heard she's sort of a nasty person, but not a good debater, but we'll see, because we'll be debating her, I guess, in the pretty near future. It's going to be announced fairly soon.
She's the one who's afraid to do tough interviews? Really, Donald? You're afraid to get on the debate stage with her. That's just ridiculous. Donald Trump spends all his time doing the most softball interviews you could possibly have. He's never been asked a real question in this entire campaign season. And the few times that he has, because there's been very few times, he's completely melted down in such a destructive way to his campaign that we can see it reflected in the polls. Donald Trump can't answer a simple question because when he does, he completely destroys himself and torpedoes his campaign. And so I really hope that, as Trump kind of alluded to at the end, that we might potentially be seeing a debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. I don't know if Donald Trump was only trying to push for a Fox debate as a tactic, or I actually do think he's scared, and I do think his campaign knows that if he does get up on the debate stage, it'll be horrible for him. Not only because everything he says is off-putting to voters, but just because the contrast that we'd be able to see with our eyes, you don't even have to hear it, that you can see between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris would be all you need to know. Completely crystal clear. And again, like I said, the words from Donald Trump would also be ridiculous. And a great example of that comes from this clip.
Because if she does this to America, every one of us are going to either be leaving or we're going to be living like dogs. Our whole country, our whole system is going to collapse. Even the talk about her has driven the stock market down.
Yeah.
You know, when the stock market goes down, when you see it go down, that's because she gets a decent poll number. She gets bounces in her poll, the market goes down. The stock market will collapse like in 1929 if they're elected.
When the markets are up, Trump claims it's because of him. When they take a little bit of a dip, he claims it's because of Kamala Harris's poll numbers. Hey, Trump, what about when the market collapsed when you were president? Whose fault was that? Was that your fault, or was that Kamala rising in the polls back in 2020, March of 2020, April of 2020? This is Donald Trump in a nutshell. Completely void of accountability. Does not want to take accountability for anything that is actually his fault, and wants to get all the goodies of things that he didn't do. That is Donald Trump, a con man who doesn't take accountability. And it's so bad, this specific example, that a host on Fox actually called Donald Trump out for it.
But the Donald Trump thing in the market amazes me. When they're up, it's all because of him and looking forward to him. When they're down, it's all because the Democrats and how horrific they are. Yet some of our biggest point fall-offs, 3 of the biggest of the top 10, occurred during his administration. Now, a lot of those were in the COVID years. I get that. But, you either own the markets or you don't. It does confuse me. But thank you for giving an overview there. We're going to be pursuing that and who's to blame, who's to take credit, and we will be following up on that. But I keep a very, very close look at all the records here, Sellos and otherwise. 3 big ones, the 3 biggest among them in history of the markets occurred during the Trump administration. Not all on him, but they did occur under his watch. So just want to remind you of that.
The contrast in this election couldn't be more clear. And I talk about this all the time because it is so incredibly true. Kamala Harris is a career prosecutor. Now, it's not just that she's a prosecutor, she's a career public servant. And Donald Trump has been a con man his entire life, caring about himself alone. That's it. That's the difference. The criminal who cares about himself and the prosecutor who has been spending her entire life making sure people are protected from the corrupt like Donald Trump. What more of a contrast do we need? Or J.D. Vance, who pretends that he cares about the heartland, and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who actually cares about the community that he's grown up in, who is the most organic politician maybe I've ever seen, the most him person. He does not shy away from who he actually is and what he actually cares about. When J.D. Vance is the opposite. J.D. advance his career at all costs, is only trying to bend and maneuver in whatever direction, whatever spineless direction gets him ahead in life. This is the biggest contrast to 4 people I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's incredibly clear, even in interviews like this, even in Trump's softball interviews, that he is more unfit to be president than ever. He is completely unraveling. He is completely unhinged. He's lost his mind in a way that baffles me. I didn't think Donald Trump could lose it anymore, but somehow he has. And so I hope that America starts to take note. And they already have. We are seeing Donald Trump not just drop in the poll numbers because Kamala Harris is gaining with Democrats and independents. No, we are seeing Republicans, 5 to 10%, move over to Kamala Harris from Donald Trump in any given poll. This is a historic surge by Kamala Harris, and it's only continuing every time Donald Trump opens his mouth. So, Donald, I invite you to do more interviews like this. Destroy your campaign. It would make me so happy. I'd love to see it. It'd be incredible. Keep doing these interviews. Please debate. We'd love to see you crash and burn even more. And if you'd like to see that as well, I will be keeping y'all updated on it. So make sure, as always, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like. And if you want to support this channel in a little extra way, you can become a monthly member and join our exclusive membership. We're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff over there. Bonus content every week, and I am excited to bring it to y'all. And until next time, I'll see you soon.